I want to take this opportunity to welcome everybody. We're so glad you're here. We're going to have a most interesting afternoon. We're here, it's 1 o'clock in Eastern Standard Time, and it's 8 o'clock Nitsana's time. But we're thrilled to have her under the circumstances in Israel. It's very difficult, very challenging, but she made it, and we're so grateful. So today the title is Fighting the Legal Street Fight for Israel. So Nitsana Darshan-Leitner is an attorney in Israel, an activist. She was born in Petah Tikva, and she is of Persian heritage, and her family made Aliyah to Israel from Shiraz, Iran, around the time of the founding of the state. She studied law at Bar-Ilan University and an MBA from Manchester University. She's married, has 6 children, including triplets. That's an accomplishment. She's president of Shirat Hadin Law Center, which was started around the Second Intifada, I believe. Nitsana is the leader in lawfare. As a lawyer, she brings banks, governments, corporations to task for funding and supporting terrorism, boycotts, and other prejudicial behavior against Israel according to international law. At Shirat Hadin, she and her team of lawyers are relentless in pursuing terrorist regimes and the financial aspect that fuel this whole area. And she has represented hundreds of terror victims in legal actions against terror organizations and their supporters. She has successfully recovered more than $200 million in compensation on their behalf. And she has initiated a legal campaign to deprive terrorists of social media resources such as Facebook, Twitter, etc. In her efforts to combat anti-Semitism and anti-Israel activities, she has assisted in blocking the Gaza flotilla, terminated efforts in indicting IDF soldiers for war crimes, and filed legal actions against those who boycott Israel academics and companies in violation of the law. They have become known by banks, legal organizations, and outlaw regimes around the world as leading authority and resource on stopping the movement of global terror financing. Today, they represent hundreds of terror victims in lawsuits against Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the PLO, PA, Hezbollah, Iran, Syria, Egypt, North Korea, UBS, and the Lebanese Canadian Bank. So after October 7th, they established the legal war room. They have been successful in choking off the money to Hamas. They go after cryptocurrencies, sued UNRWA, Red Cross, and Al Jazeera for financing the Hamas. And she's involved in Shomer Ami, which is a project to protect the Israeli soldiers. She and her firm have been standing up to unbridled anti-Semitism, including a lawsuit against Standing for Students for Justice in Palestine and for Harvard University. Nitsana has been chosen as one of the 50 most influential Jews in the world by the Jerusalem Post and named the Israeli Forbes magazine as one of the 50 most influential Israeli women. I hand you over to Nitsana.
Thank you, Faya, so much, and pleasure to be here. Perhaps I would start with October 7, 6:30 in the morning, when Hamas sent and shoots 5,000 rockets into Israel and simultaneously neutralize the surveillance in Israel and invade with 3,000 terrorists, residents, Nukhba terrorists, going into the kibbutzim, into the Nova Festival, going into people's houses, burning people alive, tying babies to their parents, burning them, raping women, beheading, mutilating, massacring. That day, 1,200 people got killed and more than 250 children, elderly, women, men were kidnapped to Gaza. Israel was in war. And this war had two goals: to bring back the hostages and to destroy Hamas. I received a phone call to join the war. The phone call was from the National Security Services, which wasn't the first time I'm called to join the IDF efforts, the State of Israel's efforts against its enemies. I'm the president of Shurat Hadin, Israel Law Center, which we actually started in the year of 2000, in the beginning of the Intifada. The blood was spilled on the streets of Jerusalem, of Tel Aviv. I finished law school, my colleague finished other universities, and we thought perhaps as lawyers we can take a role in the war against terrorism by doing what lawyers do best: go after the pocketbooks of the terror organizations. We thought that since money drives everything, so perhaps if we cut off the flow of the money, we can cut off the flow of the terrorism. So we started filing lawsuits against Hamas, Islamic Jihad, PLO, and in the United States against Iran, against Syria. And after 2 years, we started winning in court. We won judgments for hundreds of millions of dollars and liens on tens of millions of shekels. So we were approached by a secret unit in the Mossad called Harpoon. It was headed by the legendary head of the Mossad, Meir Dagan, that realized that money is the oxygen to terrorism. And if you want to destroy the terrorism, you have to destroy their financial infrastructure. And he launched this unit. And this unit had representatives of the Shabak, of the Mossad, of the military, of the defense ministry. But it had only one goal: to go after terror financing, to follow this money, target this money, and kill this money. And they told us in the course of the operation, they accumulated so many documents, so much evidence that prove how the money is winding up in the hands of the Palestinian terror organization. It will be a shame not to use it. And perhaps they can collaborate with us. We utilize this evidence in court and expand our activity and bring the fight against terror financing to the next level. So we did. We launched Shurat Hadin, and we are representing terror victims since then, thousands of terror victims in lawsuits and legal actions against Hamas, Islamic Jihad, PLO, the Palestinian Authority, against Iran, Syria, North Korea, against Arab banks, European banks, Chinese banks, Lebanese banks, against Twitter, Google, Facebook, fighting terrorism in court. So on October 7, it was obvious that the security services will call us up to see what we can do in order to achieve the two goals of the war: to bring back the hostages and to dismantle Hamas. And this is how we contribute to these goals. First, we're going after those who fund Hamas. Israel made a terrible mistake. This, my counterpart told me on the phone, when Israel allowed Qatar to fund Hamas in Gaza, allowing them to bring suitcases full of cash into Gaza, allowing the Qatari charity to fund the Hamas humanitarian projects in Gaza. All that was a mistake. Israel allowed foreign workers, Palestinian workers from Gaza, to go and work in Israel, which ultimately turned against Israel, provided information to the Nukhba terrorists by gaining it with working in Israeli houses. All because Israel thought that if Hamas will receive some money, and the population in Gaza will raise and have nice sort of living, perhaps it will calm down Hamas and drives out its interest to fight Israel. Turned to be a mistake. So now we are trying to choke off the money of Hamas. First, we're going after the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority gives $1 billion to Hamas. It goes to the health ministry of Gaza and the education ministry and projects of Hamas in Gaza. But Hamas is the one that governs Gaza. Hamas runs the government. Hamas collects the tax money in Gaza. Hamas is the one that's supposed to pay for all this infrastructure in Gaza. If somebody else pays for it, Hamas has a free $1 billion to convert to its military operation. And this is how they're able to dig their underground tunnels, 750 kilometers long, 7 floors down on the ground. You can drive a truck inside them. This is how they were able to bring into Gaza tens of thousands of missiles and rockets and launchers, and you manufacture in Gaza RPGs and hand grenades and rifles, $1 billion a year. That must stop. So we sued the Palestinian Authority on behalf of the victims of October 7th. We sued the Qatari Charity Foundation that is giving hundreds of millions of dollars to the foundations of Hamas in Gaza. We sued the cryptocurrency companies that allowed Hamas to have crowdsourcing campaigns utilizing cryptocurrency. Hamas put ads on social media asking people to donate to his war against the Zionists, but asked them not to donate in dollars because he can't cash dollars. Asked them to use cryptocurrencies. We sued Binance, which is the main exchange for the cryptocurrency companies in the United States, on behalf of the October 7th victims. This is in order to destroy Hamas. But to bring back the hostages, we needed to do something different. And this is where we sued the Red Cross. The Red Cross is the only organization in the world that has the right, and I would say obligation, to go into each and every armed conflict in the world and provide assistance to the prisoners who are captured by the different militaries. That's according to the international law. That's according to the Geneva Convention. And the Red Cross fulfilled its duty for all these years, since the day it was born. In the Second World War, and in the Russian-Ukraine war, and in the Kosovo war, and in every war, the Red Cross has, no matter what the army is, no matter what the situation is, and make sure that the prisoners from both sides are not being tortured, are not being raped, provide them with medicine they need, except when it came to Israel. Since the beginning of the war, the Red Cross refuses to go and visit the Israeli hostages that are kept in captivity by Hamas in Gaza. Refuse to give them the medicine that they so need. Prime Minister Netanyahu met with the president of the Red Cross, handed her a box of medicine, urged her to take this medicine to the hostages in Gaza, but the president of the Red Cross refused. She said, I'm not taking it, and wished Netanyahu good luck. So we sued the Red Cross. We sued the Red Cross because we allege that it's not a matter of ability for the Red Cross to go and visit the hostages. It's only a matter of will. And we allege that since the beginning, already from the day of the Holocaust, the Red Cross refused to go and visit the Jews in the concentration camps, seeing it as an internal German problem. Today, there is an apology on the Red Cross website. You open the website, you see a notice saying that perhaps it was a mistake not to visit the Jews in Auschwitz and the other concentration camps. I don't want to open the Red Cross website in a couple of years and see an apology. Perhaps it was a mistake not to visit our hostages in captivity in Gaza. And this is why I sued them in court. The Red Cross now has to come and file a defense. And believe me, he didn't find a lawyer to represent them in court for 2 months. And now, when he's now in court, they file all preliminary motions, all allegations, but one thing they haven't filed yet, a defense, because they have none. We sued UNRWA. If you want to think about the day after, if you want to understand why among the other terrorists that invaded Israel on October 7th, there were thousands of residents of Gaza piling in, want to use the opportunity to massacre Jews. If you want to understand this hatred towards Israel, that it spreads all over the Gaza Strip, we find it in UNRWA. UNRWA is a refugee organization. It belongs to the UN. It's called UN Work and Relief Agency. But it doesn't really take care of the refugees that fled from Israel in 1948, those Palestinian refugees. He put them in refugee camps, don't allow them to get citizenship in the countries where they went to, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Jordan, in Gaza, which belonged to Egypt after 48. Doesn't let them to get integrated in the society over there. Doesn't let them to get jobs or to marry the citizens in these countries. He keeps them in refugee camps, tiny, crowded refugee camps, provide them with all the food and shelter and clothing they need, but make sure they don't leave. Make sure they preserve their status as refugee. Why? Because there will be a day in the future where these refugees will be able to exercise their right of return, and they will be able to go back to their houses which they left in Akko, in Haifa, in Tel Aviv. In the end of the day, they all carry the key of their houses on their necklace. So in order to keep this idea of right of return, UNRWA teaches the residents to hate Jews. We all know that. But on October 7th, we realized that UNRWA is actually participated in the massacre, became Hamas. Employees of UNRWA kidnapped Israeli citizens. A doctor of UNRWA and teacher of UNRWA were found keeping hostages in their house. In every facility of UNRWA, kindergarten, school, medical clinic, the IDF found launchers and missiles and rockets. And underneath each and every facility, there is a tunnel. The head of UNRWA said it didn't know, but it makes some noise to dig a tunnel, and it seems like you can go through and don't bump into missiles and rockets in your office. So you can't say you didn't know. So we sued UNRWA in Israel, and we brought an injunction in the United States against the State Department to defund UNRWA, because if you cut off their funding, you can really dismantle this organization. And if you want to think about the day after, if you want to open a new page in Gaza, UNRWA has to disappear. And that's the goal of this lawsuit. We Israelis thought that after October 7th, the world would be with us. that they finally understand what monsters are living on our border, what atrocity they committed against the Israelis and the Jews. And we are right for one day. Already on October 8th, we saw massive demonstrations in the campuses in the United States, in London, on the streets of Paris, calling to kill Jews. Using this phrase, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. When you ask these demonstrators, where is the river and what is the sea, they didn't know. But they knew one thing. They knew that by calling this phrase, they mean to destroy Israel. They were siding with Hamas. In the campuses, it went over the top. Jewish students were scared for their life. They couldn't walk freely in the campuses anymore. The main organization that incited the other students to demonstrate and to go after Jewish students is called Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP. So we brought a lawsuit against SJP. And we allege that these students of SJP, when they call from the river to the sea, they know exactly what the river is and what is the sea. And they mean very well to exchange the Jewish state with the Palestinian one. They use the same tactics of Hamas, intimidation, terrorism, and they share the same goals of Hamas to kill Jews, to destroy the Jewish state. They are siding with Hamas with full heart. The law in the United States prohibits any organization in the United States to provide any sort of services to a designated terror organization. SJP is providing studential services, PR services, propaganda services to Hamas, which is a designated terror organization, and therefore is responsible for the atrocities that Hamas committed on October 7. The lawsuit is brought on behalf of the victims in the federal court in Florida. And finally, we sued Al Jazeera for the same reasons. Al Jazeera is not a neutral media outlet. It's actually the media component of Hamas. They pay Hamas terrorists to get interviews. They pay them to serve as journalists. They ask them to join them and follow them when they massacre Jews. They spread the propaganda of Hamas. Al Jazeera belongs to Hamas and therefore is again responsible for the acts of Hamas. These lawsuits are filed in Israel, in the United States. They may take some years to settle, but hopefully we'll see their impact right there, immediately. And Shraddin is known with the long-term cases we have filed. It's not the first time we're filing lawsuits that people think that will never settle or perhaps have little chance to win. And in the end, due to our persistence and due to our resilience, we go with these cases until the end and win them. And we have to take this case until the end because our victims, the plaintiffs, fought until the very end. Tomer Nagar was 20 years old soldier. He was posted in Kisufim outpost near the border of Gaza. And at 6:30 in the morning on October 7th, it was his turn to watch the outpost from the bunker. He sat by himself in the bunker and he saw the thousands of rockets falling and he saw the hundreds of terrorists running towards him. He knew that if he leaves his position, his friends in the outpost has zero chance to survive. They need to wake up. It was early in the morning. They have to get dressed. They have to get armed. They have to take their position. So he decided to stay in the bunker and singly fight the terrorists. His friend that woke up knew that if he stays in the bunker, he has zero chance to survive. So they called him to join them. But Tomer Naga refused and fought the terrorists, utilizing all the ammunition he had for a full half an hour until the last bullet, which after it, he was killed. When his friends came and brought him to the outpost, they counted 650 bullet shells that he used against the terrorists. And I heard the rabbi saying that when Angel Gabriel came to escort Tomer's soul to heaven, he put him right near the throne of glory. These are our soldiers. They fought until the end. They were not deterred. They were not scared. They knew they were doing the right thing. And so do we. We'll fight until the end. We are not deterred. We are not scared because we are doing the right thing. We seek justice for the victims, and we want to make sure that October 7 doesn't happen again. Meanwhile, we find ourselves fighting in other fronts against the International Criminal Court, against the International Court of Justice. Hamas went to court, not him himself, utilizing South Africa to bring a genocide complaint against Israel in the International Court of Justice. Hamas went to court, not himself, utilizing the Palestinian Authority to bring worker complaints for starvation, for humanitarian crisis, for crimes against humanity, against Israel that supposedly committed in Gaza. Hamas was doing it. And both courts fell into this trap. And I wouldn't say even fell into the trap because these courts deliberately, intentionally are going after Israel. Instead of rejecting these allegations on the spot, Israel is committing genocide. What did Hamas do in October 7th? Played football? Who commit genocide? And yet the court is going after Israel. Who commit war crimes? And yet the court issued arrest warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, and the former defense minister, Yoav Gallant. So Shurat Adin, who has a long record in the court in The Hague, came down with a decision to fight back. Israel is not a member of the court, is not formally part of this proceeding. Once they recognize the jurisdiction of the court, they will have to compel and to agree to any judgment they will give. And that will be a disaster because we know that the court is anti-Semitic and is going against Israel. Just by taking the jurisdiction issue, just by alleging that the court has jurisdiction to deal with the situation of Palestine, where Israel is not a member of the court and Palestine is not even a state, just by this mere fact, we know that the court is biased and will rule against Israel. Yet, you can't leave this open, just one side. So we came into the court and filed worker complaints against the Hamas terrorists, the Hamas leaders, who, thank God, all of them are dead now. But we did it in order to raise the public opinion, not for the beheading that Hamas committed on October 7, not for the mutilating, not for burning people alive, but for the acts of rape. For these horrible sexual assaults that has no comparison in the world. We brought women from Kosovo, women that were raped in the Serbia-Kosovo war, and now agreed to speak about it. And took them to the Nova Festival and took them to Kibbutz Be'eri and Kibbutz Kfar Gaza and let them speak to Zaka people and to the first respondents. And they came to us and told us that they investigated all the times where rape was used as a weapon of war during armed conflicts, because it's a very well phenomenon, it's known phenomenon, every military and every war rape women. In the Kosovo War, there were 20,000 women raped. But they told us what Hamas did has no precedent. The brutality they used, the cruelty they used, cutting off organs of the women while raping them, shooting them to death while raping them, burning them after they raped them, did not happen anywhere in the world. And what the world is saying about that? Nothing. The world keeps silent. No Me Too movement, not UN women rights organizations, not women international organizations. Nobody is saying anything about these atrocities, about these sexual horrible assaults that Hamas committed against our women and against our men. Where are you? It's okay to rape because you're talking about Jews? We can't keep silent. We have to go and fight back on behalf of these women, on behalf of our men. And it doesn't stop in the International Criminal Court. Now there is a new phenomenon. Courts around the world that claim they have universal jurisdiction are arresting IDF soldiers for war crimes. There is an organization from Norway that files thousands of war crime complaints against soldiers that now visiting these countries. And they don't have to show much. They just take the social media pages of these soldiers, show that they are wearing uniforms, prove that they're IDF soldiers, and that's it. And that's enough to issue a war crime complaint against this soldier while he's visiting a trip after the army or while he's in reserve visiting his friends or family. Shorat Adin launched a campaign called Shomer Ami, which helped the ex-soldiers to understand what they need to do before they go to this country. So they lit their social media pages to make sure there is no mentioning of them being served as a combat unit, of course, for sure. To take the number of the consulate, the Israeli consulate of the country where you went to. And if, God forbid, you get arrested, don't collaborate. Don't cooperate with the interrogation. In the end, these cases ending up in the level of the foreign ministry of the country to our foreign ministry. It level of the diplomatic representatives, not by the court. Don't provide them more information that they already have. And we provide the soldiers with legal consultants from all over the world. We have a legal war room which has 600 volunteer lawyers that are committed to come and help any Israeli soldier that might get arrested in a foreign country. This is what we do. And we'll continue to fight on behalf of the victims and continue to protect IDF soldiers. We owe it to them. And we owe it to our country. I may end with the following story. Before I end with a story, it may seem far-reaching. It may seem, what you're suing the Red Cross, what you're suing UNRWA, don't they have immunity? Aren't they belong to the UN? Don't they have respect from all the nations? And if you win a judgment against them, how will you collect? Same with the Palestinian Authority, same with Hamas. Questions that need to be answered. And I will tell you that Shurat ad-Din has been very successful all these years. We won judgments against the Palestinian Authority, which we forced them to pay. Just recently, I won a judgment for 250 million shekels on behalf of the soldiers that were lynched in the Palestinian police station in the beginning of the Intifada in Ramallah. I won a judgment and I forced the Palestinian Authority to pay this money from the tax money that Israel collects for them. When I win a judgment against Iran, I don't stop. I continue and executing this judgment against Iranian assets, found bank accounts that belong to the Iranian government in the United States. I put a lien on this account. The State Department opposed us. The State Department wanted to have a say what to do with the money. They wanted to keep the money to better days with Iran. They didn't let the victims to receive it. So we hired lobbyists. We changed the law in Congress, which say that the right of the victims to enforce their judgment against a state-sponsored terrorism overrules any other right, and we were able to seize the money in the account and give it to the terror victims, $40 million. We found a building in Manhattan called 655th Avenue, owned by the Iranian government. We put a lien on the building. Iran came to court, fought us. By the way, they come to court every time. Every time we put our hand on their assets, they send lawyers to court. And the case went all the way to the Supreme Court and Iran lost. And now the building is being sold for $700 million. The proceeds will go to the terror victims. When Boeing wanted to sign an agreement with Iran to sell them 80 aircraft for $17 billion, we went to the court in Chicago, where Boeing has its headquarters, and put a lien on the deal. We said, we have an Iranian judgment. We are entitled to the Iranian money that will go in this deal or to the aircraft. So every time we find an Iranian asset, we collect it against our judgment. We forced Iran to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to terror victims. Banks, which are sued by us, sell these cases out of court. No bank wants to have a judgment declaring that they are aiding and abetting a terror organization. They will lose their license to work in the United States and elsewhere. So they settle the cases. But also, not only the victims receive money, the cases send a shockwave through the international banking system that no bank agreed anymore to open bank account to a designated terror organization. And no bank agreed to operate in terror zones like South Lebanon or Gaza. This put an end to any international banking system in these places, all due to our cases. We fought the social media giants for inciting to terrorism. And we took these cases all the way to the Supreme Court. The social media giants claim they have immunity. They can't be sued in court. But the Supreme Court of the United States rejected this allegation and allowed us to continue with the case against the social media giants. We have to put an end to this incitement to terrorism. We learned that words can really kill. And we fought Airbnb that wanted to boycott Israel and brought it to settle the case out of court, and they backtracked their policy of boycotting. And we fought Ben and Jerry's when they wanted to boycott Judea and Samaria and not to sell ice cream over there. So we've been successful. And this will be the case in the October 7th cases as well. We don't have a choice. And this brings me to the final story. Michael was 9 years old, Amalia 5 years old, and Abigail 3 years old, brothers and sisters that live in Kfar Gaza with her parents. And October 7, 7:30 in the morning, the terrorists came to Kfar Gaza. They were the first houses the terrorists went in, and the parents who saw the terrorists coming told the kids to stay in the house and went outside to fight the terrorists. After a short struggle, the terrorists killed the parents. Abigail, at 3 years old, ran into her parents, and the terrorists kidnapped her to Gaza. Michael made a phone call to 101 asking for help. A policewoman answered the phone. He asked him, what happened? He said, there are terrorists near my house. She asked him, where are your parents? He said, they killed them. She said, are you sure? He said, yes, they're just right in front of me. So she said, who's with you in the house? He said, my sister Amalia, she's 5 years old. She told him, is there a bed you can hide underneath it? He said, there is a bed, but it's too low, I cannot hide underneath it. She said, is there a closet you can hide in it? He said, there is a closet. So she said, take your sister Amalia, go into the closet, shut the door, and don't open it until the soldiers come and call your name. And he took his sister Amalia and went into the closet and shut the door and waited 9 hours until the soldiers came and called his name. In what era children have to hide in a closet for their life? When we swore never again, we need to mean never again. And Israel turned the corner. Now we're finally winning. After the pagers operation, and after cutting off the heads of all the leaders of Hezbollah and Hamas, and after taking down the Iranian defense system, Israel is winning, because this is how it goes. The people of Israel had a lot of atrocities for thousands of years. And just recently in the Inquisition, we had to convert, and in the programs we had to run away, and the Holocaust, we couldn't even run away, but we got up and we built a state. And now we don't have to convert, and now we don't have to run away. And now we have the strongest army in the world that allows us to fight back. But we need to do it together. And I'm calling you to come and help and support any cause, including Shurat Adin. Shurat Adin is a non-for-profit organization. All donations are tax deductible in Canada, in the United States. You are welcome to join us in this war, because only together we will win. And in the end, I promise you, we are going to win. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for an extraordinary presentation. I think everyone had bits and pieces, but we had no idea of your leadership and consistency in giving everyone a way to go forward. So I have a few questions. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So. Okay, good. So just following up on your comments about UNRWA, one of my colleagues, Ron Levy, has asked, you know, Hillel Neuer has been trying to have the rapporteur Francesca Albanese dismissed from her position, and as representatives of the UN benefit from some immunity. Do you have any comments or strategies on this? Because she also appears on all the media, US, everywhere, Canada, like she's innocent and has no knowledge of anything.
Right, exactly. So obviously, UNRWA is a UN organization, will claim immunity, and so will the president. However, immunity is a political issue. It's not a legal issue. Under Biden administration, the State Department, the DOJ, Department of Justice, came and said that UNRWA has immunity It relies on the UN treaty that gives all UN organizations immunity from legal proceedings, and said that the United States honors this immunity. But here comes Trump's administration. The DOJ changed, and now they allege that the UNRWA does not have immunity, that although the UN treaty provides any UN organization with an immunity, United States never enacted it, never enforced it, and therefore UNRWA does not have immunity. So the case in the United States can move forward against UNRWA. Hopefully the judge will accept the DOJ's statement of interest. And also in Israel, hopefully the Attorney General of the State of Israel will rely on the position of the DOJ in the United States and strip UNRWA from its immunity. It's time to show these organizations that they cannot provide support to a terror organization, cannot participate in terror acts, and think that they will be free and walk free.
Thank you. I have a few more questions. One has a lot to do with Qatar, which you mentioned at the very beginning of your talk. So they seem so involved and they're trying to be the mediator, but they're playing, is it a two-faced game, or how would you comment on their role going forward? Or what do we, it's very...
Yeah. Qatar is an enemy state. It's not formally recognized as such, not formally designated as such, but it's an enemy state. Qatar is the mother of October 7th. Qatar funded Hamas and still continues to fund Hamas. Qatar hosts the leaders of Hamas in Doha. They let them walk around free. They gave them Qatari passports, allow them to travel all over the world freely, openly. And now Hamas claims that this is the negotiator and try to be the mediator with the hostage release deal. But just recently, we learned that while Egypt came with a proposal releasing half of the live hostages, 11 of them, and half of the dead hostages, in return to 5 weeks of ceasefire, Qatar told Hamas not to accept it because Qatar had a different idea to have a ceasefire of 5 to 7 years in return to releasing all the hostages, something that Israel will never accept because Israel's target is to destroy Hamas. They cannot just put an end to the war without destroying Hamas. So this is Qatar, and unfortunately Qatar plays the game with the westernized countries. US has a huge military base in Qatar. Qatar has a lot of money that fund the campuses in the United States, any lobbies in the United States, any formal official in the United States and Europe, they just buy their way. And I know, and we are lobbying very much in Israel for that, to stop relying on Qatar. Qatar has to be recognized as an enemy state and not let them in any process.
I hear that, there's been a lot of concern in Canada because the recent elections and the governments are sending millions of dollars to the Palestinians. But what we can see is it's one thing to allege humanitarian aid, but we don't know who's going to receive the money because so far from what I hear from your talk, it goes through UNRWA or Hamas or people that the actual people that is supposed to receive the money will not be available to get it.
100%. We know that there is no difference between the benevolent wing to a terror organization to its military wing. It's embedded. An organization, the humanitarian organization in Gaza, is actually helping Hamas in many, many, many fronts. They pay the employees of the organization, which is supposed to be the employees, and they get a salary, but this is during the day. And at nighttime, these same employees go and carry out attacks, becoming terrorists. They let Hamas to use the facilities of the humanitarian project of this organization, humanitarian organization. And in the end, if this humanitarian project provide the population with food, with shelter, with clothing, it actually frees Hamas money that they were supposed to take care of the population. They were supposed to pay for this, free its money to the military purposes. And there is a famous case in the United States called Holder versus Humanitarian Law Project. Professors from Harvard University that agreed to help the Tamil Tiger, which is a Sri Lanka terror organization, to get off the watch list of the State Department, and agreed to provide them with legal advice, how to speak to Congress, what to say, what to allege. And these professors were indicted by Holder, the former Attorney General, for violating the Anti-Terrorism Act. They say that they are aiding and abetting a terror organization. The professor came to court and said, what did we do? We didn't provide any material support to the terror organization. We gave them advice, which is protected by freedom of speech, and we gave it for free. We didn't even charge them money. And the court said that any support you provide a designated terror organization, considered to be a material support, even if it's protected by freedom of speech, and even if it's given for free, because then you free other money to the terror organization to utilize to its terrorist goals. And this is the case. There is no difference, and this is how we should look at things. Fight the same way we fight the military wing of Hamas, we have to fight the benevolent wing of it.
I think from what we see in Canada, and I'm very interested in all the work you've been doing on social media, we could have a whole talk with the 280 lawyers in Quebec that are just dealing with that. It's just extremely important. You know, we have to face the media all the time in Canada, BBC, CBC, oh, they bombed a hospital, oh, they're starving children. You know, so we have these conflicts. And I think, you know, what guidance do you give to us? Because we are the ones that have to stay fast and fight and support you and all the good work that everyone's doing for Israel. Do you have some guidance, messages?
Well, Israel provided humanitarian aid to Gaza from the first day of the war. There was no starvation in Gaza. There was no humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Biden made sure that Israel provides food, ton of food to the Gazans, and indeed hundreds of trucks full of merchandise and food entered Gaza on a daily basis. In the ceasefire, where the Hamas released the prisoners, the hostages in the past prisoner release deal, Israel allowed 600 trucks to go into Gaza every day. Now there is no humanitarian aid entering Gaza because we realize that all this humanitarian aid wind up in the hands of Hamas. Hamas takes it over, sell it to the residents of Gaza, make billions of dollars from this, and continue its fight against Israel. It takes the residents as hostages, use them as human shields, take over their food, and don't let them go, don't let them leave, don't let them live. And at the same time, continue its war against Israel because Israel foolishly allowed them to take over the humanitarian aid. So when you want to say why Israel stopped the humanitarian aid is because of this reason. No country in the world will provide its enemy in a time of a war with food, merchandise, and money. That's a suicide. What Israel is trying to do now is to find ways to provide humanitarian aid to the population without the involvement of Hamas, to create pockets which will be clear from terrorists, only residents of Gaza, and to give them food. Genocide, the same thing. Israel does not commit genocide in Gaza. Israel is very, very careful when they target terrorists, and they make sure that when they target, they are recognized as terrorists. Houses that are launchers there are military targets, and Israel is allowed, according to the international law, to target these houses, to target these terrorists. Indeed, because Hamas surrounds himself with residents, a lot of residents getting killed. There are a lot of casualties, but this is Hamas' fault. If Hamas would have respected the international law that orders you to fight only wearing uniforms, you're wearing insignias, fight only from war zones, not to utilize people as human shields, not to utilize babies or children as human shields, as Hamas does. So there will not be any casualties in Gaza, only terrorists will be killed. But Hamas violates the international law. Hamas uses the international law to his benefit, knowing that he's immune while Israel is not. Israel, as a democratic state, must comply with the international law. It's an asymmetrical war. Knowing all that, Israel is very, very careful. Israel sends warnings to the residents to vacate their places before they go and hit. They make phone calls, they send text messages, they send WhatsApps to the residents of Gaza to clear. They throw flyers from the air by helicopters, and only then Israel goes and strike. And before it goes and strike, there is a legal advisor that checks 100% if the military target, it is indeed military, and if the area is clear, and only then gives the permission to shoot. No other military in the world is acting this way.
And I think the other thing we have here in North America is we have the sympathizers for the situation without the education. You know, they just take false facts and they disrupt and at the university, so it continues, and I think it will continue for some time. Do you think it's possible to eradicate Hamas, or is there an end game? You don't have to answer the question, but it's one of the questions we have. So, listen,
I'll tell you the truth. I think it's possible to eradicate Hamas. Yes, I believe so. And the way to do it is first to kill the leaders of Hamas, to kill the terrorists of Hamas as much as the IDF can, and to destroy all its ammunition and tunnels. But then Hamas remains as an idea, and Hamas remains in Judea and Samaria and abroad. And they will find a way to crawl back into Gaza and rise up again. So in order to stop that and to prevent this from happening, Israel has to destroy the financial infrastructure of Hamas and to stop any way of Hamas funding. Hamas will not be able to rise if it has no money. And I can give you hundreds of examples of how any terror attack starts and ends with money. And if they don't have this money, if they don't have this support, if they don't have countries like Qatar to support Hamas or Iran to support Hamas, if they don't have Turkish banks that allow Hamas to receive money, if they don't have humanitarian charities, NGOs around the world to tunnel money to Hamas, Hamas will be dismantled. Hamas will disappear. And take ISIS, for example.
Yeah.
ISIS was a terrible, horrible, scary terror organization in 2015, 2016, when it got up. There was no person in the world that didn't know about ISIS. And they were so successful because they had a ton of money. They took over the oil fields in Iraq and in Syria and made billions of dollars. This is how they were able to pay their soldiers, to pay their army, to pay the population, which they conquered. This is how ISIS operated until United States decided to bomb ISIS. But in the beginning, they just bombed the headquarters of ISIS, the military bases of ISIS, and ISIS kept going. Only when they hit their oil fields, only when they bombed their source of income, only then ISIS got hit. ISIS got harmed. And slowly, slowly, they paid less and less money to their soldiers, less and less money to the population, until they disappeared. You don't hear about ISIS as an organization anymore. You hear about it as an idea. People still think ISIS, whatever, but it doesn't exist as an organization anymore. And this
Very
is
true.
what to do.
I must say you've been extremely generous with your time and your education. It's been a privilege. I have one last question. You mentioned all this lawfare. You know, everyone's going after the soldiers, after Israel and the courts. Do you think this will also stop, or they're going to try and continue to use it to disrupt the world order, or will it also sort of have its time and slow down?
This will continue unless somebody is doing something against it, which I count on Trump to stand to the side of Israel and to fight this war crime allegations. Look, the United States has a law. It's called the American Services Protection Act. And it allows the President of the United States to utilize any power it has, including military power, to rescue American soldiers or its allies from the hands of the International Criminal Court. This law is called Invade the Hague because of this authority. And President Trump is utilizing this law, is putting sanctions on the workers and the employees of the International Criminal Court, personal sanctions on the prosecutors, on the judges, which can destroy the life of these people. It puts pressure on countries not to collaborate with the International Criminal Court. If Trump will keep siding with Israel on this issue and bash anyone that cooperate with the ICC, these war crimes allegations will end. And as a matter of fact, we see now that the Court of Appeal not destroy, but ask the lower court to deal again with the issue of jurisdiction. So there is some movement that we see in the International Criminal Court, I guess as a result of Trump's efforts. The same thing Trump needs to do with these courts around the world that seek to have universal jurisdiction. Come and say, no chance, no way. And it's just up to the American administration. If nobody is stopping them, these courts will continue. It happened since the 80s, I think the 90s when they went after Ariel Sharon. They're going after IDF commanders, officers, after Tzipi Livni and Ehud Barak and all these Israeli officials. It's not the first time, and unfortunately, it will not be the last.
Well, you've gotten a 5-star. Many thanks, Toda Rabah. Great work. We really wish you all the luck and to continue your great work. And I think you've given us the courage, and we need to keep doing what we need to do and follow your guidance. And I'm going to leave the last word to Farla.
Thank you very much.
Well, I wanted to show everyone your book, Nitsana.
Yeah.
You wrote in 2000, was published in 2017, that you co-wrote with Mr. Katz. And it's an amazing book. It reveals what was going on at the time with terrorism and your efforts that with Harpoon to, the name of the book is Harpoon, but it was a covert war against terrorism and the money masters. And it reveals what was going on with this Mayor Dagan, who was quite this legendary person, how he got through all this and went in disguise and into the small towns in Gaza and whatever, and he survived. This is unbelievable. But all the intelligence that you did and the work and how you describe it is unbelievable. So I urge everyone to read this book. You can buy it or get it at the library. It's quite something. And I just want to say you've done yeoman's work. We are behind you, and we need so many more Nitsanas in this world.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.